Lord is one. The Shema of Israel. Yisrael. God is supreme. God is supreme. The opening cry of the Muezzin's prayer from the minaret for Islam. This evening, my intent and my plan was to go into and look at some of the beliefs behind the Arab-Israeli conflict. Now keep in mind, a belief is something you cannot prove, but you believe it to be true. You act on it as if it were true. I used the example last time of driving home on 6. I believe I'm going home safely. And if I believe that Avenue of the Cities is the safest road, I'm going to take it. If I think 6 is the most dangerous road, I'm going to avoid it. Now, the facts may be the opposite, but I'm going to act on what I believe. People act on what they believe. Everybody has a set of beliefs. Some are religious, some are secular, some are a mixture, you name it, beliefs. However, we have noticed a few things happening in that part of the world in a neighboring country, Iraq. There is a relationship in terms of understanding that. But what I would like to ask you for tonight is, would you rather skip to Iraq and set Arab-Israeli aside, or would you rather stay with Arab-Israeli and maybe at some point in the future, add a week and we'll go to Iraq? Because it warrants a separate time. It is not the same conflict by any means.
Let's add a week.
Let's add a week?
Add a week.
Okay. Then let us go on to this particular part of the world. Again, the methodology is one that, looking at beliefs, and how do the beliefs of a people, a group, a nation, influence their behavior and their actions, and if understanding that can help us in terms of resolving those conflicts. Let's say, I'm still Pastor Larry Conway. I am still a retired Army chaplain, still spent 22 years in active duty and taught at the Command and General Staff College, this kind of stuff. Okay. Again, questions, comments are welcome, interruptions are welcome, challenges are welcome. As I said before, if you have the courage to ask it, I have the courage to tap dance around your answer. But more seriously, or even answer, or even start to answer, or admit I don't know.
Okay, I'll ask one then. Considering all the fun that is being had in Iraq and Afghanistan, how does Iran fit into that in the middle without getting us involved as we have been elsewhere?
So you don't want to add a week, you want to do that this week?
Oh,
No, let's
I
do
missed
2
it.
extra weeks.
Forget
You missed it?
If we deal with Iraq, we must deal with Iran. If we deal with Iraq, we must deal with Kurdistan, which does not exist, but if it did, would include part of Iraq, a hunk of Iran, and the eastern third of Turkey. If we're going to deal with Iraq, you must deal with Syria and a big hunk of an ethnic group that goes across that border down toward Baghdad, the Sunnis.
Anyway, the group said they wanted to add another week at the end. And
At the end.
yes.
We talked about
and
Iraq.
do,
Okay,
Yeah.
I misunderstood because
Yeah.
of all what is happening. I thought we were
Yeah.
jumping to that tonight.
Okay.
I confuse these.
But I have to admit, understanding this conflict can help us in terms of that, understanding that conflict. Because this map here, if it's white, they're pro-Palestine. That to one extent or another, some radically, some not so radically, they would like to see a state of Israel go away and replaced by a Palestinian state. Note that everybody in Iraq, all three sides in that conflict, all agree on that. Note how many are pro-Israeli. That's the blue. That's a little bigger than New Jersey, folks. Just to give you an idea of scale. And neutral, Turkey, Cyprus. I guess you could say Crete would be neutral too, as part of Greece, but not exactly pro-Israeli by any means. So you have this one little New Jersey-shaped, New Jersey size, roughly, a little bigger, piece of land in the Middle East, and the whole neighborhood says we have a bad neighbor, in their opinion. Okay. Coming in a little closer. This is the state of Israel as it was originally envisioned according to the 1947 partition of Palestine by the UN. The Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. The West Bank is still occupied by Israel. The Gaza Strip is not. Well, most of the West Bank is still occupied by Israel. Most of the Gaza Strip is not. The Golan Heights are. What you've got going on in here is a whole bunch of little islands. If I were to draw in all the areas that the Palestinian Authority controls, it'd be all these little islands surrounded by Israeli-controlled areas. There is no continuity. There's no connection to them. There's an island it's like islands in a sea of Israel, is what the Palestinians have.
Sir.
And the border here is still controlled by Israel.
All right,
Yeah.
so
And the area that's labeled the West Bank up there is considered occupied territory by even the Israelis.
Mm-hmm.
And so those people are not citizens of a state necessarily, anybody there, unless they're Israeli by.
Yeah. The eastern part of Jerusalem, which the Palestinians claim still to be part of, well, I'll get to Jerusalem later, but yeah. This is considered occupied territory by most of the world. There are some Israeli factions that say, no, it is Israeli. But that's part of the problem here. We do not have a clear Group A against Group B. You've got a range of Group A from radical to moderates versus a Group B range from radical to moderates. And they're sometimes fighting among themselves, just to stir the mix up a little bit. The Golan Heights in the north with Syria. You go up. Israel has held on to this mainly for military purposes, because holding the heights makes it a heck of a lot harder for Syria to invade. Of course, now Syria is in no condition to invade. We'll deal more with that in a future week. But Israel still holds this part of Syrian territory. This is the immediate neighborhood. Again, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, Gaza Strip, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria. Questions?
What's the map on the right?
This one here?
Yeah.
That's just a local neighborhood. Eastern part of the Mediterranean.
Oh, okay. Just showing the neighborhood versus Israel.
right,
Okay.
the purples there is Israel.
The purple there is Israel. The one on the left here shows you the administrative districts of Israel. There are 6 of them. There's Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem, the northern, the central, and the southern. It's a unitary government again, so you don't have states. Governors or regions are appointed. Of course, this is the size of a state. So you may argue you don't need that kind of federal system. Yes?
I need to know what part is Palestine?
Where is Palestine? Depends on
What
who
part
you,
do they,
depends on who you talk to.
okay, all right.
If you're Israeli, it's these little, they're not shown on the map, little dots. They're like areas,
Yeah,
disconnected areas throughout the West Bank. That is Palestine. You talk to the Palestinians, it's the Gaza Strip and the West Bank.
okay.
If you were to talk to a British citizen back in 1946, it would be Israel, Jordan, West Bank, and Gaza.
And
Yes.
What's going on?
What's going on? I'm sorry?
Yeah, with the whole thing. I don't know what's going on right now.
Right now, currently, there's another round of peace talks about to fail.
Oh,
U.S. Secretary of State Kerry is doing his best to try to revive them, but neither side seems particularly interested in talking at the moment. The Palestinians are moving toward full recognition of statehood, which scares Israel. That full recognition would give the Palestinian cause some rights and some leverage that they currently do not have, and Israel does not want them to have it. So Israel is trying to prevent it, and the Palestinian Authority is moving toward being recognized in the UN as a state. So that's about where we are currently.
And so the West Bank is essentially the main, like, that is essentially Palestine?
Yes and no.
To an extent, I mean, yeah.
Okay. This is PLO controlled,
Okay. Palestinian Authority.
PLO.
Mhm.
This is Hamas.
Oh, okay.
Oh. They have just declared a unity government between Hamas and the PLO. That's complicating things. That's why the Israelis don't want to talk now. Because the PLO has agreed to a two-state solution. That means a Palestinian state and an Israeli state. Hamas is dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. Now, since these two have now joined forces in a unity government, Israel will not negotiate with any group or organization dedicated to its destruction. Period. In their terminology, we do not negotiate with terrorists. So now they will not talk to the PLO. Because the Palestine Liberation Organization now includes Hamas and the Fatah wing of the PLO. The Hamas wing are now working together.
So is there a big difference in the number of people involved in Hamas and the
Not too much. This is only about 11 miles wide. It's not that big, but there's a lot of people live there.
You know,
The
a lot more
Gaza
than
Strip's only 11
in the other
miles
part.
Wide,
What?
something like that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're talking about small areas here.
And
Yeah.
You've never been to New Jersey? New Jersey's pretty small.
Yeah, go to Jersey, you get the idea.
Well, on the old maps, Palestine is along the Mediterranean.
Yes,
Why is Palestinians now to the right of Jerusalem?
because of the division.
Yeah.
Okay, well, because of the division the British did back in 1947.
Okay, you need to do the history.
Yeah, time to go to history, folks. Let me see here. Before we get to history, real quick. Jerusalem, the traditional quarters. This is the old city. I'm calling it the historic city. The Armenian quarter, the Jewish quarter, Muslim quarter, Christian quarter. Here's the Temple Mount. There's the Dome of the Rock. Here is where the temple was. Here is where the Roman fort once was. There is the third holiest shrine of all of Islam, the Dome of the Rock.
On top of the Jewish temple.
On top of the platform where the Jewish temple stood. That, I think, gives a great visual or mental image of the kind of mess and intertwining that's going on in the Middle East.
Who are the Armenians?
Hmm?
Who are the Armenians?
The ones that are still starving. From when I was a child.
Armenia is a country to the north. It was once part of the Soviet Union. It became became independent with the breakup of the Soviet Union in '89.
No, I didn't.
How
It
did
is
they
an
come-
ancient Christian
I was
community.
just going to say, how did they come to have a quarter of Jerusalem?
Had to do with, okay, here we go.
Okay.
Had to do with running this church, believe it or not.
Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Yeah, the Armenian Patriarchate. In other words, with Jerusalem becoming Christian controlled back in, oh gosh, days of the Eastern Roman Empire, various groups wanted to control the city, or felt that they had the right to control the holy sites for the pilgrims. The Armenians were one of them. And since they had an early Christian group, they were part of the they were part of the Roman Empire at that time. They came on down. So this is like 500s, that time frame roughly.
Are they in the Orthodox tradition?
Yeah,
Armenians?
they're an Orthodox tradition.
And in the Christian quarter, is it more
A variety.
variety?
You'll see a number of Orthodox as well as Catholic in there. Now, that means you'll notice there's a Coptic, Egyptian, Greek Orthodox, Greek Catholic, Greek Roman Catholic, Latin, also Roman Catholic, but the Latin rite as opposed to the Orthodox Greek Catholic rite, but these folks still follow Rome. There's some other churches through here, various groups down here as well, the Armenian Patriarchate. It's so bad and so mixed up that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, okay? What religion, by agreement, has the keys to the church, opens and locks it up?
It's the Armenians, I think.
The Jews.
Those are
Muslims.
Muslims.
Because they don't have a dog in the fight. There are Armenians who say we should control this church. It should be ours. They have been camped out on the roof of the building since the 1860s. They've set up little squatter shacks. They've run electricity in by extension cords when electricity came in. There are two other groups that argue over who controls that church as well, and they actually have their areas inside the building. They couldn't even agree over who locked the doors. So there's a Muslim family that does that by tradition. Is it hitting you a little bit like a bowl, like a mess of spaghetti in a bowl? So that's the historic city. But let me back up. I guess this one will work well. This will probably work best. Before World War I, this whole area was part of, down through here, was part of the Ottoman Empire. That Turkey. Today, Turkey. With World War I, Turkey decided to go with Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Central Powers. And if you remember your history, they lost. Germany lost some land. Austria-Hungary ceased to exist as a nation. It was carved up into, well, Austria, Hungary, some others, Yugoslavia among them. What happened to Turkey was, or the Ottoman Empire was, it lost this whole area. So our friends the British, along with their allies the French, used the principle of divide and conquer to draw the boundaries we see today. It was some French and British diplomats who drew the lines of the Middle East. How much input did the people here have? None. So you have, for example, an ethnic group of Sunnis in through here. It extends down through here. This was British Iraq, this was French Syria. They drew a line between them. Divide and conquer. The Saudis, this was all desert. They didn't really care too much. They allowed the House of Saud to develop Saudi Arabia through the 1930s because it was considered worthless. This was before oil, folks. This was Palestine from the Mediterranean and all of Jordan. Sometimes called Trans-Palestine. Israel, West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, this was all one colony of Great Britain after the First World War. And this was Egypt. Okay? Which was, by the way, also a British colony. With me so far? Questions? Comments? Okay. So, after World War I, there's the Balfour Declaration, and the British government had made a commitment to create a homeland for the Jewish people.
After World War II.
No.
Oh,
One.
Okay.
One. We'll get there. Promise. World War I. After that. Now, with that, they originally thought, well, how about Uganda? That seems like a nice place. Seriously?
In Africa?
No, they never say Kenya, but they were seriously thinking about Uganda. And they decided, no, Israel, this area was their ancestral home. They're screaming about it anyway, so let's let them move back. It was not the idea of a separate government, but rather that they could establish a safe haven. So there was Jewish immigration throughout the 20s and 30s, except for that little nasty interlude called World War II. Then after World War II and the Holocaust, the floodgates opened. You had the Aliyah, in Hebrew, the return. People sneaking into Israel by all means and manners, because by then the Brits said stop, and it didn't stop. You then began to have tensions between Palestinians and Jews. Both sides were terrorists. I'm not being pejorative, I'm stating a fact. Future Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, was one of the people involved in the bombing of the King David Hotel in the mid-40s. No, sorry, late 40s. That was a terrorist act.
Where was that at?
Jerusalem.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, Jerusalem. So, the British then came up with this idea, fine, you folks can't get along, we're sick and tired of this anyway. The British were looking for just to get out. Is this sounding vaguely familiar? Get out. So, they drew these boundaries. Jordan, to include the West Bank as part of Jordan, Israel, but it didn't quite go all the way down, if I remember correctly. But they drew lines very similar to what you see here in the purple. And finally they declared a date, the British got on their boats, and they sailed off. Good luck, y'all! Glad to be out of there. Immediately, there was war. Jordan, Egypt, Syria. Iraq was still a British colony, so it was not involved. Lebanon, not so much. Attacked. By the end of the war, the Israeli forces not only fought back the three armies with ragtag whatever they had, and underground guerrilla movements turned now into a national army, but they were beginning to conquer more land, and they got down into this area, taking more out of the Negev, the southern desert. So peace was finally declared in 47. These are the borders as of 47. This was part of Jordan. Jerusalem was a divided city. The eastern part was Jordanian, including this. The old city was part of Jordan. The Wailing Wall, the temple, the heart of ancient Judaism was part of Jordan, not Israel. Okay? So, Israel becomes a state. The day it's announced, one country recognized it. I give you one guess who that country was.
United States.
United States, President Truman. We provided aid. Also, most of the European nations backed Israel. And the Soviet Union really did not have a dog in this fight at the time. Sympathies were overwhelmingly toward the downtrodden, underdog Israelis trying to create a homeland while they're being beat, while they have three Arab armies at their doors, and for their incredible skill in beating them off. Okay, we go. Then, I left a few copies of a timeline for Arab-Israeli. To summarize, it is a history of war, guerrilla war, and failed peace plans. Now the details we could get into, but to be honest with you, that's what it is from that period. 56, another war, Israel has a big victory, takes most of the Sinai, hands it back to Egypt. 1967, 7-Day War. Israel did not wait for Sadat to attack from Egypt, did not wait for Assad to attack from Syria, did not wait for the king of Jordan to attack. They were amassing their forces. It was obvious an attack is coming. Now, let me explain. If just switch entirely. If North Korea wanted to invade South Korea, we would know probably that it was a possibility a week out. We would know with certainty 48 hours in advance. Troop movements. You got to move to the border if you're going to attack. You've got to move your equipment to staging areas. You've got to set up logistics. All of this is visible from the air. It was in 67 too. The Israelis knew what was coming. They did a preemptive strike. They destroyed the Israeli Air Force on the ground on the first day.
Israeli?
I'm sorry, the Israeli Air Force destroyed the Egyptian Air Force. Thank you. Small detail.
Who supplied the Israelis with arms?
We do.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
I wondered.
We did.
Especially at that time.
In the 67 war, we set up a resupply system. They wanted for nothing. And we paid for it. They did not. They could not have done that in 67 without that support. So they take the Sinai. The Suez Canal now becomes a border and effectively is closed. They take the West Bank. They take the Golan Heights. This has been occupied territory since 1967. Now, 73. Sadat attacks Israel on the Holy of Holy Days, Yom Kippur. Kind of like attacking the United States on Christmas Day. Caught the Israelis flat-footed. Had initial success, but we supplied Israel using air power. The Egyptian advances were stopped. They were driven back. And again, the Suez Canal became a border. That event, however, led to a sense of Arab pride because, hey, we fought them to a standstill. And it was essentially a draw. We fought them. It was not just the big bad Israelis beating up on us looking like dumb klutzes. We can fight too. That actually led to a willingness to talk peace on the Arab side. Interesting? And you have the Camp David Accords in 73. Camp David Accords, with them, Sinai was returned to Egypt, West Bank, and the Gaza Strip was to become part of a Palestinian state. The Golan Heights was supposed to be returned to Syria, if and when Syria would agree to the existence of the State of Israel. Remember, Syria was not part of that agreement. It was Jordan, it was Israel, it was mainly Egypt, it was Egypt and Israel and the U.S. for that one. Later, Jordan got involved in the process. So, Syria has never said it will accept the existence of the State of Israel. Syria, to this day, its official policy is that the Zionist entity, their code name for Israel, should be destroyed. That is an illegal state. So, the Golan Heights remain in Israel's hands. With what's going on in Syria, I don't think they're going to do anything about it anytime soon. The West Bank, later on, a few years after that, Jordan relinquished its sovereignty to the West Bank. It said the West Bank is no longer Jordanian territory. It is Palestinian. So Jordan's position is that the entire West Bank, including East Jerusalem, including the Wailing Wall, should be run by the Palestinians as part of a Palestinian state. And the Gaza Strip should be a part of that state as well. That's the Egyptian position as well. A two-state solution. You may have heard of that. Since then, well, it hasn't gotten any better and hasn't gotten much worse. There hasn't been a major war. There's been minor ones, but nothing on the scale of 56 or 67. Israel's had a couple of border wars with Lebanon up here because Hezbollah, the terrorist group, the guerrilla group, the freedom fighters, depending on who you talk to, that are backed by Iran, are up in this area. And they'll lob rockets, Katyusha rockets, into northern Israel. Israel will respond by invading southern Lebanon. This has been going off and on since, gosh, the 1980s. Gaza Strip, same thing, only it's Hamas lobbing rockets into this area of Israel. And then Israel will go in and reinvade the Gaza Strip. That's happened a few times. They tried controlling the Gaza Strip under Ariel Sharon. They gave it up, and they moved the settlers out. Settlers? Many Israelis think this whole thing, West Bank, Golan Heights, all the way up to just outside Damascus, as well as a good hunk of Jordan, rightfully belongs to Israel. Because King Solomon ruled it. And David ruled it. They will talk about this area as Samaria and Judea, and they will use the old terms. So that's another part of the mix. So we've had this back and forth, and currently we're in the end of another failed attempt at peace. And that's how we got to where we are.
I thought we started way back before that.
I've given you so far a modern political view of where it started. I do not deny any of the facts I've shared with you. But I think we've got to go back a lot further to see the roots and the causes of this conflict. Let's go back a little further. Let's go back 4,000 years to Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael. Now, there was a handout out there, and it has the Bible and the Quran, Genesis, and Surah 37. And if there's still more out there, you can go ahead and spread them around. It is the story of the sacrifice of who? Whom? Thank you. Yes, I remember talking about that a few weeks ago. Grammar matters.
Isaac.
The Bible says Isaac. Are we familiar with the story as it is in the Bible?
Yes.
Abraham is told to sacrifice his only son Isaac. Isaac doesn't know what's going on. Okay? He goes there, he's bound, he's put on the altar. Abraham's ready to thrust the sword, and God says, stop. And there's a ram caught in a thicket. The ram becomes the sacrifice. Isaac is freed. That story has had many different meanings. Some people think it's a polemic against human sacrifice, which in that time was real. Some have said it's a story about faith and trust in God, and there are other interpretations. But the Quran also has this story. Only the son is not named, except that it is the only son. Okay, Bible trivia. The Bible and the Quran agree. Isaac and Ishmael are the sons of Abraham. No argument there. Who, by agreement on both, is the oldest?
Ishmael.
Ishmael. Which one is the legitimate?
Isaac.
Isaac. Now, note that the Quran's version is a little different. Most Islamic scholars think it is Ishmael, not Isaac. Because it says only son, they figure this happened before Isaac was born. However, there are other Islamic scholars who go, no, you got it all wet. It really is Isaac. So, in this story, Ishmael, or whoever it is a willing participant in the sacrifice. If God wills it, I submit. Islam means submission. A Muslim is a submitter, one who submits to the will of God. So, we'll say Ishmael. Ishmael is a good Muslim. He is submitting to the will of God. He willingly goes to his own sacrifice. And again, there's no sacrifice. They praise Allah, which is just the naming for God in Arabic, by the way. If we had an Arabic translation of the Bible, you'd see Allah for God. So, little subtle difference, isn't it? Who's being sacrificed? What's their role? And that gets to the point of why I say this is a 4,000-year-old conflict. Abraham is given a promise by God. Right? I will make of you a nation. Your descendants will be greater than the grains of sand on the seashore. Right? Okay, who gets the promise? The oldest or the legitimate?
Legitimate.
I'm sorry?
Legitimate.
Legitimate is the Bible, Isaac. The Quran would say no. But this is where Islam is divided. Some would say both sons. There is a moderate opinion that says both, because all the sons should inherit from the father. And you can find hadith, sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, as well as Quran to back that up. As well as some parts of the Bible, too, by the way, interestingly enough.
And it was common then to have more than one wife,
Yeah.
to have concubines. The
Jewish opinion has always been only Isaac. Ishmael has no right. No claim. Islam has two viewpoints. One is Ishmael, not Isaac. That's the more extremist view. The more moderate view is both. So, fast forward to today. We've got two groups of people, both saying God gave us this land.
And their blood. Their blood related.
And they're blood related. They're both Semitic peoples. I'm wearing a pin. It says peace, and it says peace in Hebrew, and it says peace in Arabic. Shalom, salam. Do you hear the similarities? Mm-hmm. Both languages write the opposite of ours. We go this way, right?
Left to right.
Left to right. So I throw the pen around. Both Arabic and Hebrew go the other way. They use different alphabets, but the structure is similar. Even the direction of the writing is similar. So, my perspective is you have a group of people that say, this is our land. God gave it to us, and the other side is saying the same thing. So that when you're dealing with the modern situation, you have Jewish extremists, you have Arab extremists. You have Jewish people willing to share for peace, you have Arabs willing to share for peace. And you've got every shade in between. The closest they've ever come to peace since '56 was probably during the time of Menachem Begin. Oh, when was that? It's in that handout. I want to say 70s, 80s. I'm forgetting exactly when. But what happened to Prime Minister Begin, who was signing early 70s, Oslo Accords? And it was really looking like there might really be peace. Until a Jewish extremist killed the Prime Minister of Israel and effectively scuttled the plan. Because the next Prime Minister wasn't so interested in that peace plan, which would have divided Samaria and Judea into a Palestinian state and a Jewish state. We think, oh, the Arabs are the terrorists. Both sides have them. We think, oh, only Israelis want peace. No, both sides have them. There are groups in Israel, Arabs and Israelis, who are actively working together for peace. And there are also groups who are actively working to destroy the other one.
And how long had the Palestinians been there that they had control? Because the Palestinians were there for a while.
Yeah. Now, to take you through Israel, this was the ancient kingdom of David and Solomon. The kingdom is split. There's the twin northern tribes, Judah in the south, the tribe of Levi, never had a land of its own anyway, so they're scattered between the two. The Kohanim. Northern kingdom disappears to Assyria in the 700s BC. Southern kingdom goes into exile into Babylon around 580, roughly. 530, they return, one of the great miracles of the Old Testament. The southern kingdom reestablishes itself as Judah, Judea, Jews, where that term comes from. There is a heavy Jewish presence here through the time of Jesus until the time of Masada, 70 AD, when the Romans have finally said, we have had enough of this people. We've had it with them. They forced them to leave Israel. No one who was Jewish could live there. And they leveled the city of Jerusalem.
Including the temple.
Except for the temple, almost. I'll show you. Almost. Now, when the Romans leveled the city, they didn't just leave rubble. They literally carted off every stone, every block, everything they could take. So when they leveled Jerusalem, all this was totally gone. They left the Temple Mount without the temple. They literally dismantled the temple. Some think they may have used it as fill and left some of it underneath. That's arguable. No, we don't know if it's there or not. The Arabs will not, the Muslims will not allow any excavations under this sacred site. But they left the Temple Mount, they left the Roman fort, which is now gone. Everything else was leveled. And you have what's called in Jewish history the diaspora of Jewish people wandering the world. And Christian for a while. After Islam conquered the area, it gradually became Muslim, became overwhelmingly Muslim, until Jewish settlements started moving in after World War I and the Balfour Declaration, which takes you into modern history. So you've had Palestinian families living here for 400, 500, 600, 700 years. Can you imagine living in a house where you could track, say, my ancestors 400 years ago built this home? Can you imagine that connection to the land? Now, there's a war. You are forced out of your home against your will, and you cannot go back. And now another family lives in your home. That happened to the Palestinians. Before the 47 war, Jewish settlers were buying the land. After 47, within Israel proper, they were seizing the land. Now, many of the Palestinians, let's be fair about this, left Israel proper. Jordan and Egyptian forces were broadcasting on the radio telling Palestinians, leave your homes, come here to this camp in Egypt or in Jordan, where it's safe. Once we conquer them, then you can go home. They're still there. That's the origin of the camps, the refugee camps. They are pretty permanent structures since they've been there since 1949, 47, 46.
In Jordan and Israel, in Egypt, where are you saying these are?
These are in various parts of the Arab world, near Israel. And there are people there now, their grandsons and their great-grandsons are saying, we want our house back. Now, some of them were purchased.
Are they in Syria also?
Yeah, Syria too.
More in Lebanon, though, aren't they?
There are some in Lebanon too, yes. These refugee camps are the source of strength for Hezbollah, the group that is Iranian-backed, Shia. It's Palestinians who have come up here a lot. That Hezbollah comes in, they provide health clinics, they provide education, they provide other assistance in these camps, and so they are backed politically by the people in those camps.
And that's the terrorist group.
That's one of the terrorist groups.